person. And so I'm going to start with that. Usually I wait, but Roger Phillip is going to be taking Brad's place tonight. And he's our Zoom host with the Skagit Dem Zoom support team. And he'll be handling the muting, unmuting, other technical issues. And most of us are muted right now. And later I'll explain about how you unmute yourself and raise your hand if anybody has any need for explanation. So let's start the meeting. Thank you all for coming. Welcome and good evening. It's a gorgeous evening. Thanks for joining the Fidalgo Democrats Zoom meeting. And my name is Barbara Cooper, and I'm the chair of the Fidalgo Democrats. And I want to explain a teeny bit about the Democrats. The Fidalgo Democrats are an independent democratic association with a focus on education. I want to remind everybody that we are not a PAC. We cannot endorse candidates or contribute to their campaigns. You are welcome to put your contact information in the chat. And if people are interested, they can then contact you and go from there. So that's something we need to let everybody know. It's kind of confusing sometimes. We'd like to start the meeting with an acknowledgement, and Sari Peterson is going to do that for us.
We, the Fidalgo Democrats, acknowledge that we gather on Indigenous land, traditional territories of the Coast Salish, particularly the Samish and the Swinomish people. We pay our respects to their elders of the past, present, and future.
Okay, thank you a lot, Sarah. Appreciate that. And I just want to let folks know we're going to be meeting in July. Our next meeting is July 12th, and Deborah Lakanoff is coming and is going to be the speaker. Details to follow, and it will be on Zoom, and there'll be a Zoom link sent out. And there's just two quick announcements. The Fidalgo Democrats and the Skagit Democrats are participating in the Pride Parade on Saturday. That's this coming Saturday, which is June 18th in Anacortes. If you would like to participate, just let me know. You can give me a call and I can give you the details. The other thing we're going to be doing is we're also, both the Skagit and the Fidalgo Democrats are going to be participating in the July 4th parade in Anacortes, which is a Monday. If you have any questions, again, my phone number is 360-293-4123. So please feel free to give me a call and I'll get back to you. Okay, before I introduce Liz Lovelett tonight, I'd like to ask if there are any elected officials or Democratic Party officials, including PCOs. If there's anybody, please let me know, because sometimes I miss people. So, okay, Doreen is going to.
Oh, I'm just saying
Oh, we lost you.
an elected official right now. I guess that's all I wanted to say. Because I didn't have a question.
Oh, no, I was just wondering if you wanted, well, we're going to introduce you.
I'm sorry, I have really horrible connections.
Oh,
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, we're hearing you now.
And I'm
Okay.
sorry, my service is terrible. My service is terrible, so I apologize
Oh, that's frustrating.
because I'm only
right.
hearing about every few words.
Oh, I'm sorry. Philippe.
I'm the lead Safetin, a PCO for Dewey Beach, precinct 119. Thank you.
And Rita, I think Rita came in.
Yes.
I'm PCO for Skyline at Anacortes 224.
Okay. All right. Okay, so the other thing I always like to do, I really appreciate Don Ambrose with the Skagit Democrats newsletter. He's wonderful about putting in our Zoom and helping us out with that. And in fact, even when I forgot last time I was on vacation, he contacted me and told me I didn't do it, and he was right. So thank you, Don. And Carol and Rich Tambler do a Whidbey newsletter, which is really very interesting, and thank them both for doing that. It's a lot of work. So my next, before we move on with Liz, I was going to recognize anybody who's running for public office. Please let me know in case I don't see you, and please introduce yourself. Let us know what you're running for. And again, if you'd like to put your information in the chat, please do that. I see, looking here, I see Jermaine, would you like to introduce yourself? It's Jermaine
Hi, I'm Jermaine. Yes, Cornegay. Yes, hi, I'm Jermaine Cornegay. Let me know if you are not hearing me right, because I am trying to figure out my connection. They're installing Ziply right now, so the service has been really bad. Anyway, I'm running for Skagit Public Utility District for District 3. I am actually currently a Public Utility District Commissioner. I was appointed to Aaron Berg's seat almost 2 years ago. It'll be 2 years in August. And I have to say, I absolutely love it. And I want to remain, so I am running for election. I won't have a primary, but I'll be in a general, and I'll be the last one on the ballot. And it'll be the last race on the ballot, but I did win a lot, so I'll be first in there. I'm not sure how much time I have. I'll put my information in the chat, but I have a website, jermaine4pud.com. And I'm having a kickoff or a campaign on July 9th at Farmstrong, 1 to 3. And it's a spud feed. So it's a potato feed for, Skagit Public Utility District. And it's just a potato bar. And anyways, I really enjoyed being on the PUD all this time, and I've always enjoyed advocating for our public water. I mean, for probably the last 20 years, I've been doing that since the Sandra Spargo days. So since being there, we've actually we're putting in a $40 million transmission line, from our Judy Reservoir over to the Big Rock area. That's a big project. That's like the biggest project I think we've ever had. 40 million bucks. It'll be done by next summer. We got thanks to my relationship with Congressman Larson, we got $2 million for a fish passage. The Alger, we had a lot of fish passages that we had to replace after spending a lot of money, because the state decided that for environmental purposes for our fish, we had to redo that. So we got money maybe coming from Rick Larson on that. We've been best tasting water for about 20 years. We got broadband coming, COVID moratorium. We did that. We have all this kind of stuff. Anyways, I look forward to your vote, and whatever else you need, I'll put my information in the chat. And thank you so much for the invite.
Sure, thanks for coming. Appreciate it. I also saw Danny Hagan. I said hi to him. Danny, would you like to introduce yourself and let us know what's going on here? He's out of town.
Yes, I would.
Great,
My
thank
name's
you.
Danny Hagan. I'm running for Skagit County Assessor. I apologize. I'm over in Friday Harbor right now at the Wasaka conference. So I'm dealing with some ferry noise and a little airplane noise, but hopefully you can hear me okay. Thank you, Barbara, for inviting me. I really appreciate the opportunity to introduce myself. Thank you to Jermaine and any other candidates that are running. It takes a lot of courage, commitment, and willingness to serve our community to do this. Special thank you to Liz Lovelett for being such an incredible example of work ethic, intelligence, and willingness to collaborate, which public servants need. I think people deserve accuracy, transparency, and equity in assessments. I believe I have the skills, knowledge, and leadership ability to do that. And I would love any support that any of you are willing to give. I also have a website, votedannyhagan.com. I will put that in the chat. I just wanted to talk about one focus I have, and that's education. I really want to educate my staff and have some of the most knowledgeable and technically sound appraisers in the state. I want to educate the community in what our tax system is, how property taxes work, and what a budget-based system is. And as evidence of being over here in Wasaka, I want to work and build relationships with our legislators to make sure I educate them in how our system works, because that's a really important job. And all of our state legislators have to know so much about so many things. I really enjoy being an expert in one thing and being able to pass on that knowledge. So thank you. And again, I'll put my website into the chat.
Oh, great. Thank you so much for taking the time. I appreciate it. And I appreciate anybody who is running. Thank you. Thank you. I know this is challenging times. So, yeah. And, you know, like I said, if people put their website and that helps you learn more about the candidates, then this just quick, brief introduction. I also see right now, Dave Paul. Thank you for coming. So.
Hey, Barbara. Thank you so
Hi.
much for inviting us. Hey, I think I know many folks here, but if you don't know me, I'm Dave Paul. I represent the 10th Legislative District. Hey, Senator Lovelett, so nice to see you. Just got back. My daughter and I just walked in the door. We were out doorbelling after work, and we're working hard to retain our seat to make sure we've got Democratic representation in the 10th District. This is going to be a challenging year for Democrats in swing districts like ours, and we've already hit 2,500 doors, and we are working hard. My academic quarter ends this week, and that gives me some extra time next week to spend an extra day on the campaign side. I want to thank everybody for your support. You know, we're working very hard to make sure that we've got great education systems in our state, and that those education, K-12 education and community colleges lead to family wage jobs. Senator Lovelett and Representative Rammel and I have worked extremely hard on putting ferries front and center in our transportation budget, and then making sure that our transportation budget is also focused on maintenance and preservation, which is so important in rural districts like the 10th and the 30th. Really good to see everybody, and I don't want to take time away from Senator Lovelett, but I'll put my contact information in the chat, and we'd love to see you at an event this summer or fall. Take care, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks so much for coming. I'm going to, I don't see, I personally don't see anybody else, but that I want to make sure that if there is another candidate that I've missed, please raise your hand and let me know so I don't miss you.
Barbara, Valit has his hand up.
Khalid, what's up?
If I may, just to follow up on what they said, Shay Burke, as you probably, most of you have received the invitation, a week from this Thursday on the 23rd in the evening at 5:30 at her place, she's having a fundraiser for Dave and Clyde Shavers. I'm hoping all of you will be able to join us there. Anyway, thank you.
Okay. I forgot to mention, I hope that Rita, we're recording this, and our videographer is Rita Sullivan. And after this is recorded, there'll be a YouTube that comes out. So for people who want to see it again, we can do that. So again, I think we're pretty much ready to introduce Liz Lovelett, our senator. And I can read very quickly a few things because I think a lot of us know Liz, and she's probably better at introducing herself than I am, but she's a 5th generation Anacortes resident, and she's rooted and invested in the 40th district. She has served as a community leader, championing affordable housing, water management, school construction, oil train safety, and improving lives for people in her community. She has served Anacortes as a city council member and regionally as a board member for several organizations. She's a mother, sister, and daughter of Anacortes residents. She's currently pursuing her bachelor's degree at Western Washington University's Fairhaven College of Interdisciplinary Studies, studying politics, environmental science, and public health. She has been a small business owner and operator and is a proud homeowner. And this is, I have a list of her committees that are quite impressive. And these are the committees: Environmental Energy Technology, Vice Chair, Housing, Local and Local Government, Transportation, Joint Legislative Audit and Review Committee, Joint Legislative Task Force on Water Supply, National Conference of State Legislators Agricultural Task Force. I think I'm going to stop there. Let Liz introduce herself because you're quite impressive. So thank you so much. And thank you very much for coming and spending the time with us. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. And thank you, Barbara, for organizing and all your leadership that you provide in Anacortes and on Fidalgo Island for us to have a chance to be together. And a special shout out to the candidates this time. It's a hell of a strange year to run, and it takes a lot to put your hat in the ring for taking on some of these jobs. So thank you to them. So hello, everybody. I don't think there's anybody I don't know on this call. So I'll just say I'm glad to be here with you tonight. And I will give another special shout out to my mom, who's here tonight too, as a Fidalgo Democrat. Hi to Jermaine. So legislative session, it was a short one. It's a 60-day session this year, which means we're doing a supplemental budget, but we managed to get a ton of great work done, not just because we had really dedicated focus on ensuring that we were uplifting the lives of people who were the most affected by the pandemic, but also really coming together as Democrats to support policies we know are core and integral to who we are as Democrats, like our high capacity magazine ban, like reaffirming via the legislative process reproductive rights and women's and trans folks' ability to get access to medical coverage. In addition to that, we got a transportation package out, and I know Dave Paul had to run to his next event, but what a champion in the House to have the opportunity to work with. Our delegation here is really incredible. My seatmates in the 40th, Reps Rammel and Lakanoff, but then additionally our whole team that's in the 10th with Dave Paul and in the 42nd with Sharon Shoemake and Alicia Rule. We've really come together to make sure that we're representing the whole region. We'll talk a little more about how I could have more help in the Senate a little bit later, because we certainly need somebody else from our area to help me out in my chamber. But I'll just give a little brief overview of some of the work that I did and that we did as a team, and then open it up for questions, if that sounds about right.
Great, perfect.
Okay, awesome. So as Dave Paul mentioned, we really had a ferry system in crisis. We had people out in the San Juans that were unable to get to medical appointments. We had kids that were held up from getting to school. We had a retirement wave that made it so that we were short-staffed and having to cancel runs because we didn't have enough crew. So we kind of had this perfect storm brewing, a lot of vessels that were not in great shape. So we came together as a team, and with Rep Paul, we chair the Ferry Legislator Caucus that's a bicameral, bipartisan group to make sure that we have deep emphasis on the integrity of the whole of our ferry system. It's the boats, it's the crew, it's the docks. There's a lot of moving parts, but it is our marine highway system, and we have an obligation to ensure that it's adequately funded for preservation, maintenance, and all the other needs that we have out there. So with that, I also ran 4 bills that made it to the finish line with near unanimous support in both chambers, which I'm really proud of. So one of them I've gotten a lot of press on, so you may have read about, but is working with Department of Natural Resources to map and restore 10,000 acres of kelp and eelgrass forests. And this is one of the things that I want to make sure I'm always delivering on for this district and for Washington State, is continuing protection of our beloved orca, who I think are so symbolic of the nature of climate change and where we are at this place in time. So in addition to the kelp bill, also worked hard on changing the way we do stormwater funding in the Department of Transportation budget to make sure that we're getting more stormwater mitigation capacity, which is a huge contributor to pollution in the Sound. It's one of those like not as sexy areas of policy, you know, people aren't all excited about stormwater management, but that's one of those things that I get excited about. We also, as was mentioned earlier, because of our obligation in the courts, we were able to put with some matching federal dollars, a substantial down payment on our obligation to repair our failing culverts and ensure that we're restoring salmon streams throughout the watersheds of the Puget Sound. This combined effort, getting toxins and pollutions out, making sure we're remediating the habitats where the juvenile salmon live, working on getting our culvert systems holistically addressed so that the salmon can get where they need to go. These are all things that I think are really at the core of who we are as Fidalgo Democrats and people who live on an island that get to see what's happening to our natural environment here and have are just duty bound to protect it. So I'm glad to be able to work with you all on delivering on that. Back to the transportation package, because there was another good win for the Orca in that we were able to secure money that's going to be coming in from the currently being implemented Climate Commitment Act, where we're supposed to have receipts starting in 2023. And allows us to hybridize 5 of our vessels and do the terminal electrification necessary to get the carbon savings that the state has carte blanche to reduce. It's one place in our transportation space where the state is responsible for its emissions that we can make meaningful impact on how much diesel fuel we're burning. So really exciting to get that going. You guys may have heard in the news though recently that we've been having some challenges procuring boats. So we're definitely in a process with that, making sure that we can invest in our local shipbuilders to deliver the ferries of tomorrow to us so that we can ensure the integrity of our fleet. Additionally, kids ride free. Starting this fall on all public transit, including our ferries, kids under 18 get to ride for free, which I think is a working family's tax credit right there. So, and to segue on to what I worked on for working families, I ran a bill to help ensure that we modernized our definition of sanction status. I worked with the Department of Social and Health Services. The way it works is if you are a family and you have one person in your house that isn't actively looking for work, your family is sanctioned and then they cut off your benefits. So you're specifically can cut off your food benefits. So imagine you're a kid and you don't have control over what the grownups in your life are doing. And now you don't have access to healthy food options. So this modernizes and harmonizes us with newly implemented federal standards and ensures that those kids are still getting access to food and that their benefits last even as they're exiting the temporary assistance for needy families program, which is helping prop up so many families across Washington state. Also worked hard to put money in the budget, working with our WA Tech group, DSHS and our Department of Health on delivering on a single point of entry for people to access social services. One of the things that is for me lived experience, but also the experience that I hear from so many is that when you are poor and you're applying for stuff with the state, it's not easy and it's very burdensome and demoralizing, and you have 100 different applications to get through for each different thing that you need, and then you have to keep proving that you're poor again and again. It's inhumane and it doesn't help lift families out of poverty. So we're working to have it so that they put in one application and then they know what they qualify for. We know it's going to help deliver for folks that are having needs out there in the community. Additionally, was successful in a bill to ensure that we codified that paying for childcare with your campaign finances is an explicitly allowable purpose of campaign funds, and that it also extends to folks that have maybe a disabled adult in the house or family members or parents or loved ones that they're caring for, that we're really expanding that definition of caregiver and ensuring that more people have opportunities to run for office because of the very practical consideration that if you have people you're taking care of, you got to pay somebody else to be there if you're going to be out knocking on doors. And as we all know, knocking on doors is how we get what we need to get done on the campaign trail. So very excited to have had such strong support for that. And last bill, I'll give a shout out here to Danny. This is happening in the assessor's offices out there. So thanks for running. We'll have to catch up on this, but CPACER, property assessed Clean Energy and Resiliency. It's a program that we're looking to adopt in counties across Washington state in order to have exterior private financing on deep energy retrofits, seismic upgrades, fire suppression, and it specifically applies to commercial properties, multifamily, and other government buildings to use. So if they want to go big and get all the solar panels, if they want to update all their HVAC, if they want to switch to heat pumps, we're helping them comply with our clean building standards that we initially passed in 2019. So we had a technical hiccup and we needed a whole other bill, which sometimes in Olympia is like, you don't know how much it takes to push those little rocks up the hill sometimes. So it tried to die at the 11th hour, but we pulled it out. So yeah, I think I'll just leave it at that. I mean, there were so many different, we had the biggest tax break for small businesses in Washington state history, helping get, I believe, 250,000 businesses reducing their B&O, and just really work together to try to figure out what was timely and responsive to our communities in this time of need, making sure that our federal matching dollars that were coming in were being spent wisely, and really laying a blueprint for the future in terms of, infrastructure and maintaining all the things and the programs that we need to help people lift up. So thank you, and let's see if there's any questions.
Okay, thank you so much, Liz. Really appreciate it, and appreciate all that you do.
Absolutely.
Really, really wonderful work.
I have a question.
Okay.
This is Jermaine. It's saying my internet connection is unstable. What type of vitamins do you take, Senator Lovelett? I want some.
Sunshine and my CSA box.
Really.
My CSA just started last week.
Right. Okay, it looks like Dawn and Marie Ibsen have raised their hands, so I assume you have some questions.
Yes, Liz, when you were on the Anacortes City Council, I was very impressed with you. And then when you ran and we voted for you, we were happy that you got elected. You have far surpassed my expectations. You go, girl. You are doing great. I do have a question though. Is the Sydney ferry pretty much over with and it's years down the road, maybe? What's the status?
Well, glad you asked. So we recently had a study that was commissioned because it's really funny. It's always the first run that the Eastern Washington delegation wants to cut. They're like, oh, we don't need to, it's a tourist run. We don't need to go to Canada. But at any rate, it got us to a place where we actually did the study. We crunched the numbers and we found out that it's our only money-making run in the whole system. So the other challenge is that because of Coast Guard standards to go into international waters, we have to have, it's called SOLAS, it's safety of life at sea. So it's some additional fire suppression and HVAC things. At any rate, we would like to just add that package on to a future build ferry so that we have the redundancy. But right now we need that boat in the South Sound because of just logistics for right now. It's just too much for reliability. Right now, it's like we can just keep the service we've got going for right now. So the hope is that we can bring it back next year once we get our crewing levels up and can kind of switch some things around.
Okay, before we get to the next person, I wanted to also thank your legislative assistant, Jordan Cronin. He has been instrumental in going back and forth and getting these things organized. And I didn't thank him at the beginning, but I did want to make sure that we did do a shout out to him. So you can thank him for me as well. He was great.
I will. You know we have not only kind of a unique.
No, I want to ask Liz Lovelett because she.
Oh, I hear you. It's okay. It's okay. Why don't you go ahead and ask your question? Now you got to go off mute though. we totally threw the gauntlet there.
Sorry.
Oh, no problem.
I have a question. I was happy that Attorney General Ferguson was interested in pursuing an assault weapons ban in the state.
Mhm.
And I wondered what your opinion was. And I apologize if you've already talked about this. I just got in from the garden and I was a little bit late.
No, and I will say that I have not been briefed on this particular piece of news, but what I will say is that AG Ferguson has been very aggressive in crafting really thoughtful AG office request legislation around firearms. And one thing I will say is he's really very astute, and he generally doesn't pursue things that he does not think are defensible in court. And I really appreciate that, because it is a battle, and we don't want to set bad precedent accidentally, especially with the state of the Supreme Court. So it has to be careful and calculated right now. But I will say, passing this magazine capacity, we get a lot of blowback all the time from Democrats as well, just to say that, it's totally useless. But there is data that points to, not being able to have that point of sale where you can have those, just more rounds in your gun. And, I think we're all at just a real low point in our country's history, and we're all feeling that. And it's going to take some really uncomfortable action. And if we can accomplish some things at the state level that can then be emulated other places, and we can see how the data shakes out. But yeah, I'm also heartened because we have already established an Office of Firearm Safety that is currently collecting, Washington state specific data, and also having an opportunity to look at national trends, so we can really, we want to follow the data. It's an epidemic at this point, and other countries don't have it the way we do. So what does that mean? Where does that put us?
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Limo John, it's John Johnson.
Our resident photographer.
Yeah. Guess where I was last Saturday?
I bet.
March for Our Lives. And it's an epidemic indeed, for sure. And I was around a lot of very serious and dedicated people. And most of the placards were involving legal changes that long overdue. And I was busy taking pictures, obviously, but I think, Alex Rammel was there, and I think he's the one that announced there was on the agenda for next year's legislative session will be an absolute ban on assault weapons.
I think that's the AG request one that she's talking about, because, we have to run it in tandem.
Yeah, that sounds very hopeful. There's a lot of little things that can be done, but I think we need some sweeping reform that long overdue.
Yeah.
And has anything been done during this past session along those lines? You mentioned, I think, magazine restrictions. Was that?
Yeah, that's a heavy lift.
Session?
So that's not a just, that's a heavy lift.
Absolutely.
Which we did not necessarily have the votes for a couple of years ago, because this has been kicking around for a little while. But I think there was a lot more political will this year. That we additionally did one that had to do with ghost guns, the way that people can kind of fabricate untraceable firearms, and having some restrictions on that. Not like hobby guns. If you want to make your own gun, you can totally still do that, but it's untraceable parts that don't have serial numbers. So it's been amazing to me, though. I've now had the experience of 4 sessions where we have made meaningful steps every year, and the floor debates are they're shocking. Even just the side conversations, like, people really do think it's the slippery slope to just banning everything under the sun, and the rhetoric is pretty appalling. So you can't defend your home if you can't have this big of a capacity rifle. I mean, just what I don't live in that world. So we keep working on it, though. Every year we have a really strong crew, although we're losing Senator David Frocht, who's been an absolute champion of that.
What is your level of optimism that something can be achieved in the next, say, 6 months or so? Meaningful.
I'll wait to see what bills get dropped. I'm usually supportive, but I rarely run them. It's not my policy wheelhouse. Yeah.
I see. Okay. Well, lots of good luck.
Yeah.
I'm glad you're there to.
I'll
to
I'll be
voice
doing
our
all the climate
choices.
stuff. Anybody got climate questions? Because I'll be running those bills.
Okay.
Yeah, I see we have a hand raising with Kurt Huber. Hi, Kurt.
Hi, Barbara.
I actually have a question. Oh, sorry. Never mind, sorry.
Oh, hey,
Why don't you throw in the chat, Jermaine, and take it. I'll do it next.
I have a delay over here. Sorry about that.
okay.
Senator, thanks for being with us here on Tuesday night. And thanks to you and Dave Paul for all the work you did with the ferry system in this last session. You know, one of the issues, people talk a lot about boats, but the staffing's been critical and a real issue to deal with. Can you talk about some of the things that you did to deal with that in terms of training and recruiting and some of those things?
Yeah, absolutely. We've been working with our labor partners because in the ferries, there's just so many different classes of unions. There's the boatmen's union, the masters, mates, and pilots. They all, the mechanics have their own chapter. So part of it is acknowledging that, you know, we could see that we were having a crisis of so many people retiring at the same time, and yet we weren't getting people graduated into those upper, you know, more upper positions. Part of it is modernizing hiring practices so that people have the ability to, you know, accumulate the right amount of sea time doing the right position so that they can move up the ranks, and just really beefing up, you know, what we want in terms of, you know, recruitment. So there's a lot more emphasis on, you know, like right now I advocated that we pay for the TWIC cards and the Marine Mariner credentials up front that these guys and gals have to get in order to work on the boats. And that's a prohibitive expense for some people. And then you don't even know if you're going to get a job, and it takes months before you even figure it out. And then you have to have this training period where you're all over the place. So there's just a lot of, it used to work, and it worked for reasons back in the day, but now we all have to come together and figure out what that's going to look like moving forward. And one critical thing I think we're going to need to do is change our minimum staffing standards for vessels and hire accordingly, because right now it's literally like one person can't make it to the boat and they can't sail because they're on skeleton crews. And so we have to, and that's with the minimum Coast Guard standards. So I think having a couple extra people ready to go just in case so that those boats can stay going on time and on schedule is going to be necessary. So we put a lot of money into the recruitment, the retention, the, you know, everybody who wants to come out of retirement and just put in another couple of years for right now. We're not going to penalize those guys because there's weird conditions around that. Like, you know, you can't get your retirement and get an active salary. So trying to do basically everything possible in order to beef up this workforce as fast as possible to deal with our short-term needs and then long-term planning.
Thank you for all your work on that.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, before I call on people who've raised their hands, Jermaine had a question.
Yeah, what was Jermaine's question? Let me look. Do you think there's a way to get funding for a county-wide gray water system? Think our irrigation systems for our farmers, et cetera. So that's been an interesting conversation, and you might listen in on some of the Skagit County Water Task Force meetings. I mean, they called it a purple pump, if we're talking about the same thing, purple pipes, where you can send the raw water out of the river around. You don't have to send it through a treatment facility. And then that way they can, you know, irrigate without having to have all of that extra treatment. But it's always a matter of, you know, infrastructure deployment. I mean, I've long thought that if we had some kind of account to just really augment the work that the PUDs are doing on their infrastructure, all of the conveyance that has to go around the valley and to get to some of these different housing areas that you guys serve that are so challenging to maintain infrastructure, and to keep a rate with your ratepayers that isn't like going to squeeze them out of their homes, because it's amazing how quick that escalates when you need to pay for big capital costs. So part of what I want to do in my climate work is really start digging in on both the financing side and the land use ordinances side of, you know, the remaining land that we have to use. What is highest and best use? How do we look at zoning and density in order to encourage the right kinds of housing in the right kinds of places, making sure that we're not continuing to sprawl out into logging areas and farmland and wetlands. Like, we've got to start figuring some of that stuff out. And then for all of these private water systems that are out there, of which there are thousands, they really need infrastructure support badly. And it's gift of public funds. So we have to get creative, figure out how to pull this together for folks out there that are having a hard time with their water and septic. And I would rather not have a Flint situation be the reason we decide to do stuff.
Okay. I'm gonna.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, Dawn and Marie Ibsen have raised their hands. Okay, Dawn and Marie.
Okay, here we are. I have a question. This is kind of backed up by the sign behind John's picture. And that is the Second Amendment. If you read it, it's actually the shortest of all the amendments that are in there. It is like two sentences, two short sentences, and it basically says something to the effect of, in order to have a protection, to have a militia, you're allowed to have a gun.
Well-regulated militia.
Well regulated, yes. And this was done in what, 1790 or 80, something like that. It was when it was written. And the guns they had at the time, it took probably 30 to 60 seconds to load one round. And the accuracy of those guns weren't like they are today. And so people that can think that allows us to have something that'll fire off, 100 rounds in a minute or whatever, that's equivalent to what they had and were thinking of in their day. I mean, the people that wrote that that gun control back in 1790, if they saw what were considered everybody should have one of these now, they would be falling over dead. It's not realistic if you can make the comparison then and now.
I couldn't agree with you more.
Okay. Sarah has raised her hand as well. Sarah Peterson.
You opened up your focus on land use and climate, and those were the couple of things I wanted to ask you about. I was disappointed, as I'm sure you were at the end of the session when 1099 went down. And what I've read since then is that some local jurisdictions are working on that issue of getting climate into the local planning. So would you talk about the status of that one?
Yeah, absolutely. So for those that are not wonky land use people, we had this great bill, House Bill 1099, prime sponsored by one of the coolest badasses in the legislature, Miss Davina Dewar. She and I have been working on this bill for years, and it just, I will say, big policy takes a lot of sessions to socialize to a point where people are comfortable voting for it, especially when we're embedding new planning obligations for jurisdictions. I will say there was a narrative in Olympia on the other side about how we were never going to build another single family home ever again if we pass this bill, how every home will be so expensive to build, we'll never be able to build another house anyway. And it just, I was shocked because I've actually participated in a comprehensive plan update, which is where this rule, where this planning processes would go, is in comprehensive plans. It's really labor intensive. It takes a long time. It's years of your planning department needing to do this work. But that said, they have to do it anyway. They're supported by Department of Commerce. We started putting money in Commerce and WashDOT to be able to help with the technical support that's necessary to achieve these planning documents. So it was definitely the closest, craziest floor scrum I ever got to be involved with, where it was down to the absolute last minute, is it going to make it kind of excitement. It was super disappointing. It was one of the top priorities of the Environmental Coalition, but it'll come back next year. Both Rep. Dewar and I will be there, and we're coming up with different strategies around, do we drop the bill in both chambers? Do we figure out, another route for it? So it'll come back. Then the 2.0 version is a bill I dropped this year just for the purpose of kind of setting a little mile marker. It's to then take it the next step where you actually update your development regulations, because that's the piece that's often missing. Is we do, as many of you are involved with, the public vision comprehensive plan experience in Anacortes. However, it's 8 years ago now, I think, or 7 years. You know, you put all these ideas in this great document, and then if you don't take the time to update your code, and thank you to Ryan Walters and other folks in the planning department there who made that a reality, you can still have duplicitous, conflicting code on the books that make it so you don't get all those great things that you spent all that time planning for. So working to get the next pieces in place too, and then necessary funding to make that happen.
Good. So the other disappointment was the Lorraine Loomis bill. And
that needed a lot of work.
Yeah, that one,
Yeah.
I didn't hear anything about it until all the negative press came out from the farmers.
I will say that one was, it'll come back. It will come back again. We're going to keep doing salmon recovery. We're going to keep talking, but I think that it kind of got out of the gate before everybody had a chance to really weigh in.
Yeah.
And so, sometimes you know, that timing of introducing things to the public, introducing, you know, concepts to various stakeholder groups, and then, and let alone huge involvement from the tribes.
Right.
You know, it's definitely the tribes also did not necessarily want it to keep moving, because it had structural challenges that needed to be worked through. So it wasn't like
But
you know,
the
the
AG,
farmers.
but the AG was behind it.
The AG?
Yeah, I thought. Maybe
I don't
not.
think so.
Okay.
Mm-mm.
All right.
Yeah, so more to come on that. I mean, salmon, that tension between salmon recovery and agriculture is a very challenging one, and it ties into water rights, which are so fundamental to property rights. So it's definitely, it's legally fraught no matter what angle you come from.
Right.
So wading in on all of that is definitely, it's important work. But you know, I always remind myself that good legislation should also take time, because you know, we don't want the process to be one where you know, a new majority takes control, and the next thing you know, they're ramming through bills that are bad for people. So you know, the whole idea of the process is that it has to get bashed around both chambers, up one side, down the other, through the public and around the corner and back with all the advocates. And next year we'll be back with the lobbyists in the hall too. It's going to be like the whole thing.
Okay. Thank you, Liz. You're doing a great job.
Thanks.
Okay, do we have any other questions? If either raise your hand, and if you want to jump up and down, I can flip through and see if I missed anybody. Please feel free right now to unmute yourself and say I missed you. So do we have any other questions right now for Liz? Okay, looks like we don't. All
Well,
right.
stump the
So-
panel. I know you guys will come back with more stuff later.
Oh, yeah.
I'll just finish with, I do want to circle back around because I did get distracted there. Jordan and your new city council member, Amanda Hubick, and the folks in the 40th district office are just so fantastic. They really do answer your questions and concerns, and just, they were tremendous support for many folks in our community during the pandemic. And just always want to highlight just how tremendous the staff is in the legislature. They really make it so much easier to do my job. I can't imagine. There's a whole lot of different grades of state legislatures, and some of them have like no professional staff, and they only meet every once in a while, and they only get per diem. We, on the other hand, in Washington State have an incredible legislative support staff, and that's why we're able to get such good work done. So just wouldn't want to take all the credit.
Thank you.
Yeah. And hi to Judith and Boz.
Well, thank you so much, Liz, for coming. I know you're super busy, so I really appreciate you taking the time. I think everybody on does. And be aware, we're going to be sending out a YouTube video of this in a few, well, probably in a few days. And so we get a lot of people who watch that as well, who can't make it on Tuesday night. So thank you very, very much. And thank you for all you do. I think we're getting a lot of clapping hands here. And it's really, really appreciated. So.
Well, we'll need your help this year. I would be remiss if I didn't mention Representative Sharon Shoemake running for the state Senate in the 42nd. There's going to be a bunch of really important swing district races that our community has the ability to help with, and we should. So I'll be happy to send out some links for a few key Senate races where we really have not only stand to lose incredible Democrats that have been doing a great job, but their opponents are awful. I usually stay out of that. Like I want you to run on your merits, and all of these candidates can, but there's a particular slate of Republicans this year that are really just over the top. All the things that, we've been talking about working on, it's stuff that they want to dismantle, and it's pretty phenomenal. So I hope you guys will join me. I'm going to drop in the link for Sharon Shoemake to come join me in the Senate, because I'm surrounded by Republican districts, and while I work very well with all of them, it would sure help me on budget asks, capital, transportation, all the different policy spaces and regional issues to be able to have a little more Democratic density in my chamber for the Northwest Washington region. So I'll drop that in and bid you good night.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, so we have information in the chat now, a little bit more before we go. I'm going to stay on a few more minutes. I want to thank Roger Phillip for stepping in for Brad tonight. Thank you. You've done a great job. Very much appreciated. And again, we're going to have the YouTube out probably in a few days. And I want to thank everybody who's come on to the meeting. Really appreciate you taking the time and getting to ask Liz questions and just supporting the Fidalgo Democrats and Democrats in general. So thank you all. I'm going to stay on. If people want to talk after the meeting, please feel free if you have anything you want to share.
Sorry, Barbara. Sorry, Barbara. I think Shay has her hand up, if I may.
Okay.
Hi, Barbara.
Hey, it's not coming up. So, okay, Shay, what's up?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we sure can.
Okay, great, thanks. So I just wanted to put in a plug for Clyde Shavers, particularly in light of the question about gun reform. Clyde is a military veteran who's pretty familiar with weapons and who is totally in support of sensible gun safety legislation. What I really want to point out for anyone who doesn't know, the man that he's running against, the incumbent Republican, whose name is Greg Gilday, has voted against every single piece of sensible gun reform legislation that has come before him every year that he's been in the legislature. Most of those bills have passed, but they passed on the back of a slim Democratic majority. So Clyde could really use our help. He has the best possibility of flipping a red seat blue and turning the 10th legislative district, which is only recently gone from red to purple, and let's make it blue. So with the issue particularly about gun reform legislation, I just want to make sure everybody understands, not only is Clyde a really excellent candidate, but his opponent is someone worth working to get out of the legislature.
Okay, thank you, Shay. Okay. Anybody else would like to talk or make any comments, statements right now? All right. Well, it looks like we're going to end the meeting then. Seems like that's what's happening. So Roger can end the meeting for us. If please look in the before we leave, make sure you've looked into the chat for the different addresses and names. And if they're not on there, you can look up the candidates. They all have websites that you can go to and find out what's going on. And thank you all for coming. Really appreciate you taking the time, and we will be meeting again in July, and you'll be getting notifications through about Zoom links and different things. And you can always contact me if you have any questions. My phone number is at the bottom of the Zoom link, and you can always just give me a call.
Thank you, Barbara. Very nice. Thank you.
Okay, good night, everybody. Enjoy the
Thanks.
beautiful light